Hello, my chicklets. Thank you for stopping by. This is going to be our last short story by Nad98. I really wanted to say a big thank you to Nad for allowing me to read these stories on my channel. And I also would like to say a big thank you to Sour Lemon Juice, who was the artist who did a lot of the art for this month. And I would appreciate it if you all would go into the links in the descriptions. If you have a Tumblr, reach out on Tumblr, reblog their stuff, comment on it, put something in the tags. Just let Nad and Sour Lemon Juice know that you appreciate everything that they've created and show them some love as creators. For now, we're going to go ahead and read the only story in Nad's superhero family AU, Clever or Brave. Oh, and Roman? Janice called as Roman had almost run out of the dining room. Suppressing the uncomfy feeling in his tummy, Roman turned around and looked at Janice with a curious look. Yeah? Where is your history exam? Remus had me sign his when I came back from work, and you haven't given me yours yet, Janice said, and Roman's heart sunk. He turned towards him, forced his hands not to seize up with tension, and shrugged. As subtle as he tried to be, Janice noticed it. You are in the same history class as Remus is in, or did I get that wrong? No, you didn't. We're in the same class. Okay. Then where is your exam? Roman gulped and looked to the floor. I want Pops to sign it. Confused but careful, Janice pointed out, Patton is already at work for tonight. He won't be back before you leave for school tomorrow morning, and Remus mentioned that you had to have it signed by tomorrow. Roman nodded again and just wordlessly walked into the hallway. Janice attempted to follow him before the boy stepped back into the living room and handed him a lightly creased sheet. Janice eyed him and then the paper. He scanned the test he had already seen once today with Remus's writing on it and immediately spotted the glaring difference between the two sheets. All but one answer was underlined, mistakes and inconsistencies marked with red. On the top of the sheet stood the sad little 5 points out of 23, a 2.1. Janice turned and put the test on the dining table. He produced the pen out of his chest pocket and signed it on the lowest right corner. Quickly, he handed it back to Roman. Wide-eyed, his son looked up to him and pressed the paper against his chest. His lips wobbled, and he could see the sheer panic arise within him. How could it be that bad grade brought this boy closer to a mental breakdown than being run over by a car? Unaware of what to do or say, Janice kept quiet, which was entirely the wrong thing to do, as the paper in Roman's hand got crumpled in his shaking hands. Trembling, the boy looked to the ground, and for the first time in 9 years, he heard his son whimper. Roman, honey, Janice said hastily and knelt down in front of him. What is it? What upsets you? Roman's whimpers turned into loud sobs, and without thinking any longer, Janice pulled him into his arms, and Roman all but melted. Desperately, he clung to him, and Janice could feel a wet patch forming on his shoulder. Not that he cared much at the moment, but the ferocity of Roman's cries worried him even more. Since the three of them had come back into their lives, Roman had always seemed to be such a force of nature. Even in the hospital, Roman hadn't shed a tear when he realized that he would never be able to use his leg the way that he used to. No, Roman smiled more than Patton ever did, was chipper and cheery. He was a ray of sunshine, goodwill, and a great mood personified. And he was also his son. Oh, honey, Janice cooed and rubbed little circles over Roman's head. How long have you been pretending to be okay? He didn't expect an answer. He just needed Roman to know that he knew, that he understood, that Roman couldn't hide this from him. He didn't know yet how he would explain to him that he didn't need to hide it, but he would probably work that out soon enough. Hopefully. Preoccupied with his crying child, Janice didn't notice how the 4 others were standing on the doorsill between the dining room and the corridor which led upstairs. Virgil and Jake had come down to ask if they could watch some TV, and Remus had been looking for Roman, while Logan just wanted to get to the kitchen to fetch some water. Their plans had been promptly forgotten. Slightly panicked, Logan looked to his brothers, noting that both Virgil and Remus were frozen in shock, and that Jake began to look overwhelmed as well. Quietly, he went into action and pushed them out of the doorway and told them to go up to their rooms when they were out of earshot. "And what are we gonna do?" Virgil asked him, while Remus and Jake went up the stairs. "I might know what this is about and want to confirm my suspicions. I join you when I know what is going on. Now go and make sure that the tiny two won't start burning down the curtains." "Figuratively?" "Literally. Remus is in possession of a lighter, and before you ask, yes, I tried to remove it from his person and succeeded, but he had it again approximately 7 minutes and 34 seconds ago." "Frick," Virgil hissed and ran upstairs. Logan used his chance and sneaked back to the doorsill into the dining room. With little concentration, he went invisible and glimpsed back at his father and brother. Roman's cries had settled down a little, and his hands weren't clutching his poor father's suit so much anymore. Carefully he entered, remembering every board which might creak, and stopped 3 meters away from them. Janice was making soft little noises to calm Roman down. It was something that always helped to calm Virgil, and Logan suspected that Janice hoped that it would have the same effect on Roman. It seemed to work, as Roman's cries grew quieter and he began to shift in Janice's arms. Patiently, Janice sat down on the floor, gently adjusting him on his lap, and rocked him lightly in his grip. "I'm sorry." Janice sighed and cupped Roman's cheek. Roman leaned against his palm and closed his eyes sadly before he raised his voice once more. "I'm sorry I'm not smart like Logan or Remus. I'm sorry that I'm stupid. I'm sorry I made everything so complicated for you and cost you so much money. I'm sorry that I can't even pass the easy exams." Roman mumbled tearfully. "Oh, honey," Janice said and kissed the top of his head. "Having bad grades doesn't mean you're stupid. It can mean that you're being taught wrong, that you have difficulties with that topic, that you didn't learn or didn't have the chance to learn, or that you didn't know how to learn for it. But it doesn't mean that you're stupid. And even if you were, which you are not, I know there is some brilliance in your ideas and creativity. It is nothing you would need to feel sorry for. Never. I don't need genius children. Of course, I want all of you to have a good life and succeed, and that might be easier if you're smarter than average. But first and foremost, I want you all to be happy." Roman had buried his face in Janice's chest. Hiccuped breaths filled the room, and Janice kept rocking his son gently. "I'm also not mad about the accident. While it is true that you could have been more careful, nothing can be done about it anymore. I think I never really was angry with you about this. I was in shock after seeing you and Remus again after such a long time. I missed you both unspeakably every day. That I left you there is still unforgivable to me, and yet you did forgive me. I don't know where you find that strength in your heart, little prince." In the following pause, in which Janice took a few suspiciously wet-sounding breaths, Roman finally stopped crying entirely and carefully sat up to look at him. Both needed to sniff their noses simultaneously as their eyes met, and a weak little snicker escaped Roman's lips. How much Janice wished that the world would be kind to this kid. How much he yearned for the people to look at this boy the way he did. He just wanted him to feel better, to feel like he wasn't a failure, not a waste of space. He wanted his boy never to feel as small and helpless as he had felt himself, as the way they had made him feel. Clearly choking up, but not caring enough to stop, Janice placed his hands on Roman's cheeks and kissed him on the forehead. Baffled, Roman looked at him, and unknown to them, Logan was gaping with wide eyes at his father as well. It wasn't that Janice wasn't affectionate with him and his brothers, anything but really, but the vulnerability. The kiss and the gentleness was something he had rarely seen his father give so easily. Slowly, Janice pressed his forehead against Roman's and spoke softly. "I don't know how I deserve you and your siblings. I lived such a miserable and torturous life, and then you came along and refused to let me stay that way. I swear every time I doubt myself, every time I thought I shouldn't go, one of you smiled at me, laughed or giggled as if you wanted to let me know that I needed to do it. I thought the love I felt for you couldn't be any bigger, but I was proven wrong. Every day I wake up, you prove me wrong, and I love you all even more. I love you so much, Roman. There is nothing, no one, in this world who could change that. I love you." This time, Roman slung his arms around Janice and held him tightly. He didn't cry, and neither did Janice. There was just quiet. Breaths, quiet, the rustling of clothes, and the slight creaking of floorboards as they shifted their weight. The weight in the air lessened. The regret and pain in Janice's mind slowly faded, and he came back to himself, back to the situation at hand, and decided to finally be more pragmatic. Softly, he ended the hug and got back up on his legs again. Miffed, he looked at the wrinkles on his clothes and smoothed them away before he turned to look at Roman and began to meddle with his clothes as well. "Dad," Roman whined as Janice fixed his shirt. With a little tisk, he patted Roman's cheek and looked over to the table. Once more, he was collected and motioned towards the table. Roman frowned and adorably tilted his head to the side in confusion. "I recall Remus talking about a math exam tomorrow. And while we can't do anything about the history exam anymore, we can try and see what we can do about the next one." Immediately, Janice softened his look when Roman's expression turned terrified. "No worries. I only want to look over the topic with you for half an hour. More won't do you or me any good, sweetie. Maybe we'll make some progress. Maybe we don't. It doesn't matter what grade you end up getting, as long as we make the first step. It's the hardest and scariest, and I want to be there with you when you make it. Okay?" Slowly, Roman nodded and turned to the doorway. "I think Rem has the book upstairs, 'cause I forgot mine. I'll go get it." Roman mumbled and disappeared in the hallway. Amid everything, Logan almost forgot to move out of Roman's way, but did so last minute. With a heavy heart, he looked after his little brother, many thoughts coursing through his mind. He would have to be smart about helping Roman out, since he might feel like he was condescending to him, even though that was the furthest thing on Logan's mind. At this point, he only felt admiration for him. He wasn't sure if he could have pulled through such a life with as much vigor and strength as Roman had, and he wanted to make sure that his life would be easier from now on. "I love you too." Logan felt his temperature drop. Holding his breath, he looked over his shoulder and saw Janice scanning the room, but not directly landing on him. "I won't tell him that you eavesdropped, as long as you don't tell your brothers. He needs to open up about it himself. He sees himself as their protector, so showing his weakness is very hard for him. Okay, Bunny?" Logan didn't know why, but promptly he turned around, ran to his unsuspecting father, and hugged him hastily, never letting go of his invisibility. Just as fast, he let go and ran out of the room, barely managing to dodge Roman, who was running down the stairs. He heard how Janice and Roman sat down at the table, and how Roman began to explain which topics they were covering. It didn't register as he stood at the foot of the stairs and looked down at his invisible feet. Their voices were smooth, charming, inviting, just like a memory. The storm in his chest calmed. He looked up and back to the entrance of the dining room. Tomorrow he would brainstorm with Janice what he could do for Roman to help him without making him feel bad about himself. Tonight he would distract their brothers so Roman could have Janice to himself. Just this once, he told himself, and quietly walked back up the stairs. On the last step he stopped, hesitating to become visible again. Nothing but his voice traveled through the empty-seeming corridor. "I love you too." Thank you all for listening. Again, that was Clever or Brave. It is currently the only story in NAD98's Superpower Family AU, but I am very excited to see if anything else comes from this particular one. I do hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope you have a wonderful day.